April 12th, 2022. If I move out of the realm of humans for a moment, or Hunan or human, because it gets touchy, I don't want to upset anyone in the apple cart being the way it is between page turners and apple turnovers in this big apple and the circus that arrived. I don't want to malinstruct PETA either. Apparently they're human rights activists. So I want to keep this in a very clean English format for fee, fi, fo, fum. At strum. So, if I was sitting on the moon and looking at Earth and I had this scope down to the Big Apple, and I'm watching the linear fashion of my life with a sea hooked around it for the open theater that God uses when they deliver a universe master in a UM and not an MU direction. And in this scenario, let's go out of Big Apple for a moment. If I need a word of reason from, say, one of my most favorite televised areas, which is Australia. They had the most in my life frame. Africa was second, but Australia had the most veterinary teaching, kindness, and of animal care. James Cook University is there. They're a world outside of my Big Apple, and they speak nicely. I'm going to say that they speak Victorian. They're the closest English to Victorian that I've found. I find Africa has a little bit closer to the French that I adore. So without getting into other people's historical incorrectness, since this is my story, not other men, in my personal journey, if I needed to borrow someone, I think their big city is Sydney, S-I-D. If I had like a sudden infant death problem at the I-O-M-E-E-O, M-O with the M-A, perhaps integrated with an R-A for the G-O-D, being that I was delivered in a D-O-G form. So now I'm looking at where my life could have been corrected, since there is severed ties between Lynn, Lou, and myself. And there was still hope for man to get my part right, and God save the Queen. I was born to Queens, but a different Queens. I wasn't born in Queensland by Sydney. I was born in the Big Apple, Queens. Big difference. That's, I think, why there was so much theatrical attention paid from Hollywood as homage or whatever to set the scene of what it really looks like for those that don't want to get out of their comfort zone. So anyhow, or pledge allegiance to some other whatever and whatever. So if I'm just this whatever on the moon looking at Earth, and I've got a scope just on New York Zoo. I think they did that at Madagascar, honestly, but there's some exotic animals in New York Zoo. They made a movie about it, Madagascar. It's MAD, M-A-D, and SCAR, S-C-A-R. It's interesting because Brady Bunch, he was born Lion King. I was born a year after. Then Alexander was born 27 years later. And at some point, Mufasa dies, and somebody becomes the Uncle Scar. Just saying, I don't know if, he carries that wounded whatever in 27 years gone by, and the story for all of us, we're in one Zodiac boat at Cosmic Nursery, and we have a job to do in Generational X. So, here's what happens. So, the New York Zoo people, not saying, Brady Bunch needs to know about it. cusp being 68, the MH, like Houston, we got a problem. Like, I think he's something para, and I got a problem. I gotta get on the Big Apple to, like, on the horn. So now, here we are I arrived. I was perfect. I could have been athletic. I could have been scholarly. I could have been an amazing wife and an amazing chick from an egg that was acceptable to be moved to the nest of protection wherever I was supposed to be for growing up in Nest Pa by the fathers that know things. But for some reason, when my little egg arrived, there was something going on in York's Peppermint Patty area of Silver Lining. In this New York is what they called the area. In the Queens is where I landed. And so now in exotic animal terms, if I was like just say rhinoceros, elephant, whatever, usually I like the sevens to be the rhinoceros. I don't know why in Cosmic Nursery, it's just giggles at whatever, but in acceptable timing, when the world stands still, they just liked that animal. I didn't get it, but again, so I said, that's a fine, an elephant, whatever. So, the dad elephants still charge and get all mad, so that worked. So now, if I just arrived as an elephant, which usually gestationally, it takes a lot of work to get just one baby elephant calf in an exotic zoo. Normally, when they're in cages or on a game reserve, even I found out from Africa, in my area, metropolitan, it's a zoo, ZOO, but it's game out in the open, but they still have wardens there. So this works for both of them. So now, let's do small area caged animals, which is what I feel like at the moment. Not that I asked for this. But if, like, on exotic animals, there's a breeding schedule. There's pairing of lifelong mates and of animals that belong together. There's coordination between zoos. Like, there's a lot of effort and work that goes into this. So I have to think to myself, I know I arrived with that level of importance. I just know this. There are signs in the local area. It's social agreement by some of I don't know what we should call them. I don't want to call them family at the moment. But the seedlings of Mariah, because then they got married and they whatever and participation. So they've been absent in my life frame. So now once a year at Grandma's Christmas Eve, she didn't really travel much, and Uncle Eddie had one summer event, so it was one in the winter, one in the summer. And not everybody showed up, but whatever. So it was just faces that looked familiar. So that happened in the New York area. So now I'm just curious, when the zookeeper, whoever keeps that schedule, didn't get the mate for life part correct, didn't get the birth arrival of the new whatever correct, like, in human terms, who's responsible for that, like, in reality? Because there's some real problems. And, like, again, I have to call up into the heavens and the skies I have very little intelligent creatures around me feeding me any form of importance. So on a simplistic basis, which sometimes is more powerful, I have to look to something's really wrong. but it's in this planned obsolescence way that's really hard to exact. I mean, like, I can do it because I've been sitting alone in a room for 4 decades, slightly distracted by 4S.O.N on the down tick .S, because normally they put an S in front of something like that schmurd. I mean, like, it's marred. It's really a shitty situation for me. So they put an S in front of it and they make it horror. Again, tricks of the trade that have been helpful by the one visual reference I've been allowed while here. So, didn't say I wanted to stay in this cage. At one point, they let me into, like, a game area that I was able to go, like, 6 hours to myself. I really liked it there. But again, the schedule and this exotic zookeeper didn't do his job properly and didn't send me the correct mate for life. So, the human part that I was dealt in this disgusting, like, sexual misconduct by the zookeeper and by the ledger and the things in charge is a real problem, because withholding the proper mate for life and then introducing the wrong species or the wrong whatever, or changing the schedule, changing the seating, that has to go through a very special process, and in my case, it doesn't exist. So I want to know how they got a hold of scheduling and of seating, and why my particular season of breeding season was completely wrecked in reality. Who's to blame, and how do you fix it? Because I'm not going any more human lengths, any more decades. I don't even want to go a day without a 6 foot over. Because currently I'm experiencing 6 foot under syndrome, and that's a problem. It's star 1978, star 8378. I'm in this and this for quadrant and for a sign of whatever the zookeeper allowed into the area, whoever that is. It's star 1978, star 8378, Nicole, Cattaruzza. It's Earth, Solar System, Milky Way, Universe, Galaxy is broken. It's Bayside Station, Bayside, New York, 11361.